What if everything you've been taught about a broken heart is completely backward?
Oh, that is such a massive question to start with.
Right. But think about it. We treat breakups like a catastrophic failure.
We really do. It is always framed as a disaster.
Exactly. Like if you look at the movies, the music,
Yeah.
the way your friends look at you with that deep, pitying stare when you tell them the
Oh,
news.
yeah, the head tilt.
Yes, the head tilt. It is always painted as this total collapse of the dream. But today, we are exploring a radically different premise.
And it is a fascinating premise.
It is. What if a breakup isn't a collapse at all? What if, in navigating this kind of brutal transition, you are actually being handed the ultimate blank canvas?
That changes the entire landscape of how we view loss.
It really does. So welcome to our deep dive. Our mission today is to completely unpack the core themes from a really profound summary of a memoir.
Right. The memoir titled Becoming Solo.
Yes, Becoming Solo. We are going to deconstruct the raw materials of love, loss, and rebuilding, and piece together a fundamentally new understanding of what it actually means to be on your own.
It's a journey, for sure.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the text we are looking at doesn't just offer a few comforting platitudes, you know?
No, not at all. It is much deeper than that.
It takes the traditional, culturally sanctioned script for how to behave after a relationship ends, and it completely tears it to shreds.
It does. And it does so by demanding a level of psychological rigor that most of us are never really taught to apply to our personal lives.
Yeah, they don't teach this in school.
They definitely do not. This summary we are examining today, it goes far beyond detailing a single breakup. It acts as a philosophical roadmap
A roadmap for what, exactly?
for navigating some of the most difficult terrain of the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking about love, loss, identity, and grief.
Those are heavy themes.
Very heavy. The focus today will be on synthesizing these specific elements to understand the mechanics of how a person actually rebuilds a meaningful life.
Because we aren't just looking at the event of a relationship ending, right?
Right. We are looking at the architecture of the human being who emerges on the other side.
I love that phrasing, the architecture of the human being.
Yeah, because how do you take the scattered, disorganized pieces of a life that was once inextricably tied to someone else and forge them into a singular, solid foundation?
It seems impossible when you're in the middle of it.
It does. That is the journey mapped out here. And it requires an immense, almost uncomfortable amount of intentionality.
Well, if we are talking about the architecture of rebuilding, it makes sense that the memoir starts by identifying what not to build with.
Yes, clearing the debris.
Exactly. The summary tells us right up front that the narrative consciously pivots away from focusing on revenge or regret.
Which is a very deliberate choice.
It is. Instead, it centers on accepting change and rebuilding a meaningful life. But let's be entirely real for a second.
Always a good idea.
When you are standing in the wreckage of a separation, revenge and regret aren't just passing thoughts, they are screaming at you.
Oh, they are completely overwhelming.
Right. They are the default biological settings for a broken heart.
They are the absolute default. And understanding why they are the default is the first step in dismantling them.
So why are we wired this way? Why go straight to anger and sadness?
Well, the human tendency to lean heavily into either anger, which manifests outwardly as revenge, or profound sadness, which manifests inwardly as regret, is actually a highly evolved protective mechanism.
Oh, really? It's protective.
Yes. Psychologically speaking, when you experience a sudden traumatic separation, your brain perceives a massive threat to its equilibrium.
Like a physical threat.
Exactly like a physical threat. Anger is a remarkably effective way to artificially generate a sense of control.
Ah, I see.
It pumps your system full of adrenaline and dopamine. It gives you a false sense of power when you feel fundamentally powerless.
Wow. So it is basically a biological way to assert, I am not the victim of this circumstance, I am the one striking back.
Precisely. It is a defense mechanism.
Right, so if anger is actually giving you a neurochemical life vest in the middle of a storm, why throw it away?
That is a big question.
Like, if anger gives you power when you feel powerless, isn't that a useful survival mechanism in the short term?
It is a survival mechanism, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But it is one that prevents actual survival in the long term.
How so?
The problem with relying on the adrenaline of anger and revenge is that it keeps your nervous system trapped in a sympathetic fight-or-flight state.
So you are just constantly on edge.
Constantly. You cannot rebuild a complex, nuanced, independent life while your brain believes it is at war.
Man, that makes a lot of sense.
And regret operates similarly, but, On the other end of the spectrum.
The inward spectrum.
Right. If you are constantly obsessing over what you could have done differently, like replaying arguments or analyzing old text messages, you are still mentally and emotionally participating in the relationship.
You're keeping the dynamic alive in your mind.
Exactly. The author's choice to intentionally bypass these emotions in favor of what the text calls accepting change is a monumental shift.
It is basically a shift from passive to active.
Yes. It is the transition from a passive victim mentality to active agency. You stop reacting to what was done to you, and you start actively managing what is happening right now.
Okay, so if regret is fighting reality and grief is accepting it, then focusing on revenge and regret is essentially a form of emotional time travel.
Oh, that is a great way to put it.
Thanks. I mean, you are pouring all of your daily energy into a past that cannot be altered. It's like, well, think about driving a car.
Okay, let's hear it.
If you are hyper-focused on revenge or regret, it is literally like driving down the highway while exclusively staring into the rearview mirror.
Right, you are entirely focused on what is behind you.
Exactly. You might feel like you are driving because your hands are on the wheel, but you are not looking at the road ahead.
And eventually, you are going to crash.
You have to crash. You cannot navigate the present while your eyes are locked on the past.
That is a perfect analogy.
Or it is like continuing to pay the mortgage on a house you no longer own while your current apartment sits completely empty and unfurnished.
Oh, the emotional mortgage. I like that.
Yeah, you might feel like you are doing something productive because you are paying a bill, you are managing a ledger, but you are literally bankrupting your present self to fund a ghost town.
You have zero capital left.
Zero capital left to invest in the actual space you are living in right now.
That analogy gets right to the core of the cognitive load required to hold on to resentment.
It is exhausting, isn't it?
It is deeply exhausting. When you are paying that emotional mortgage on the past, your executive functioning, your ability to plan, to feel joy, to engage with new people is completely depleted.
Because all your funds are tied up in the old house.
Exactly. To accept change, as the summary dictates, you have to cut off the funding to that old property. You have to force yourself to look at the empty apartment you are currently standing in.
And that empty apartment is probably pretty scary.
Oh, yes. That empty apartment might be terrifying.
Yeah.
It might be cold. But it is the only place where you actually have agency.
Because it is the only thing that is real.
Right. This transition means recognizing that while you may not have chosen the circumstances of the breakup, you are entirely responsible for the architecture of the rebuild.
Which brings up a really crucial distinction. Because if you are told to stop regretting, the immediate fear is that you're supposed to just switch off your emotions like a robot.
Yes, people often confuse acceptance with suppression.
So where does the author draw the line? How does the memoir suggest we separate the natural grief, which the text specifically mentions as a major theme, from the destructive regret it explicitly tells us to avoid?
This is where we have to be very precise with our definitions.
Let's define them then.
Grief is the emotional processing of a present reality.
Okay.
Grief says, this relationship is over, and the absence of this person is causing me profound pain.
So it is rooted in what is actually happening.
Exactly. Grief allows you to feel the emptiness of the transition. It is grounded entirely in the truth of what has happened.
And regret.
Regret, however, is a refusal to accept that truth.
Right.
Regret says, this shouldn't be over. If I had just communicated better, if they hadn't taken that job, we would still be together.
All the what ifs.
Yes. Regret deals exclusively in alternate timelines, hypothetical scenarios, and phantom possibilities.
So grief is mourning what was actually lost, and regret is agonizing over a fictional universe that does not exist.
That is a brilliant way to summarize it. By advising the avoidance of regret, the text isn't demanding emotional suppression at all.
Because it lists grief as a mandatory theme.
Right. It explicitly lists grief as a core mandatory theme you must navigate. It is simply stating that you cannot allow your sadness to trick you into trying to rewrite history.
So grief is rooted in fact, and regret is rooted in fiction.
Exactly.
And once you start funding the fiction, once revenge and regret are truly removed from the equation, you are left standing in that empty apartment.
Face to face with reality.
Yes, facing the raw, unfiltered reality of a breakup. You drop the defenses. And the summary highlights this transition beautifully.
It really does.
It lists love, loss, identity, and grief as the major themes, and it points directly to the necessity of embracing uncertainty and rediscovering independence.
Those are two massive hurdles.
They are.
Yeah.
We have to dive deeply into that intersection of loss and identity because when you strip away the past, identity seems to be the very first casualty.
Identity is absolutely the primary casualty.
How does that happen so quickly?
Well, when we talk about a long-term romantic partnership, we are talking about two distinct lives that have slowly become neurologically and socially enmeshed.
Tangled up together.
Deeply tangled. Your daily routines, your weekend habits, your financial planning, your social circles, your very concept of what the future looks like, they all merge into a collective we.
So it is not just two people anymore. It is a new entity.
Exactly. And when a relationship ends, the we doesn't just change, it dies entirely.
Wow. It dies.
It dies. And when the we dies, it plunges the remaining I into a profound, disorienting state of uncertainty.
Because you don't even know who the I is anymore.
Right. Who are you if you aren't half of that partnership? What are your actual preferences when you no longer have to compromise with another human being every single day?
That is a terrifying question to answer.
It is. This loss of identity can trigger a psychological response that feels remarkably close to physical annihilation.
Which is why the text uses the phrase embracing uncertainty.
Yes. It frames it not as a terrifying void, but as a mandatory space for self-discovery and the cultivation of emotional resilience.
You know, it sounds almost like an organ transplant, or rather, the removal of an organ.
Oh, that is an intense image.
But it fits, right? When you are in a deeply committed relationship, your partner becomes part of your systemic biology.
They absolutely do.
Your nervous system adapts to their presence. Your schedule adapts to their sleep cycle. When that person is suddenly gone, you don't just feel sad.
Your whole body's reacting.
Yes, your whole body and mind are looking for a limb that is no longer there. You are experiencing phantom limb syndrome for an entire lifestyle.
Phantom limb syndrome for a lifestyle. Yes.
You can't just slap a bandage on it and pretend you are fine. Your whole system has to relearn how to function independently.
That is so true.
That is the rediscovering independence phase, and it requires living with the discomfort of knowing your body is currently out of balance.
Phantom limb syndrome is a highly accurate way to describe the neurological reality of a breakup.
Really? Neurologically speaking.
Yes. Your brain has physically mapped its reward systems and its prediction models around the existence of this other person.
So your brain is literally expecting them to be there.
Exactly. When they are gone, your brain is constantly firing prediction errors, which is incredibly exhausting.
That explains why you feel so physically tired after a breakup.
Completely. What the memoir is positioning here is a complete paradigm shift regarding how we handle that exhaustion.
How so?
Well, most of us treat the uncertainty of a newly solo life as a lethal threat.
Because it feels like one.
It does. Our brains are prediction machines. They want to know exactly what happens next to keep us safe.
Right, safety first.
When we can't predict the future, our amygdala flares up and we feel intense anxiety. The summary suggests that becoming solo requires looking directly at that biological panic and saying, this uncertainty isn't a threat.
So what is it then?
It is the raw material required for self-discovery.
Wow.
You cannot rediscover your independence if you are totally certain of who you are, because the person you were was inextricably tied to a dead relationship.
So you have to lose yourself to find yourself.
Essentially, yes. You had to step into the fog.
Okay, but wait. Saying embrace uncertainty is very easy when you are writing a book or analyzing a text.
Sure, it sounds very poetic.
It sounds incredibly poetic. But if you are lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering how you're going to pay rent on a single income, or you suddenly realize you don't have an emergency contact to list on a medical form, your brain isn't whispering, embrace the mystery.
No, it is definitely not.
It is screaming danger. We are biologically wired to crave security.
We are.
So how does the author expect anyone to practically bridge that gap? How do you embrace the unknown without being entirely paralyzed by the sheer terror of it?
That is the exact friction point where philosophy has to meet practical reality.
Right, because theory only goes so far.
Exactly. Embracing uncertainty, as the text advocates, does not mean you abandon all structures and blindly accept chaos.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. It means you change your relationship with the unknown variables. When the text points to building emotional resilience, it is pointing to the practical mechanism for handling this terror.
So resilience is the bridge.
Yes, resilience is not the absence of fear. It is the capacity to recover executive function while the fear is present.
Functioning through the fear.
Practically speaking, you bridge the gap by focusing with ruthless precision on what you can control.
Okay, give me an example.
You cannot control the macro uncertainty. You don't know who you will love next or where you will be in 5 years.
Right, the big picture is a blur.
But you can control the micro certainties.
Micro-certainty.
Yes, you can control what time you wake up. You can control the food you put in your body. You can control the routine you establish for your Tuesday evenings.
So it is about the little things.
You embrace the massive, terrifying unknowns by leaning heavily into tiny, reliable routines.
That feels a lot more manageable.
Over time, those micro certainties calm the nervous system. They prove to your brain that you are safe in the present moment.
Which lowers the alarm bells.
Exactly. And that slowly builds the foundation of your new solo identity, allowing the overwhelming fear of the future to recede.
So the micro-certainties act as the scaffolding for the macro-uncertainty.
Scaffold is the perfect word.
It feels like taking down a load-bearing wall in a house, right?
That is a great way to look at it.
You know, you take out this wall, the relationship that has been holding up the ceiling for years.
And the whole structure is suddenly compromised.
Right, the house doesn't just stand on its own immediately. You have to put up temporary supports.
Yes, those temporary supports are the emotional resilience we are talking about.
You use those supports while you figure out a new floor plan.
Exactly.
But building those micro-certainties is nearly impossible if your external environment is constantly destabilizing you.
That is very true.
Which is why the text moves immediately from internal resilience to external crowd control.
The social ecosystem.
Yes. The process of rediscovering independence doesn't happen in a vacuum. It requires navigating our relationships with the people who are still here.
Our friends and family.
Right. The summary explicitly emphasizes support from family and friends, the act of forgiveness, and the crucial need to set healthy boundaries.
Yes, the internal work is deeply dependent on the external ecosystem.
Because we don't live in isolation.
Exactly. We are a profoundly social species. We regulate our nervous systems through our connections with others.
So when the partner is gone, who do we look to?
When your primary romantic connection is severed, your community must step in to provide stability.
That makes sense.
However, the text makes a brilliant, vital pairing here. It immediately couples support from family and friends with the strict requirement to set healthy boundaries.
Why is that pairing so important?
The reason for this is critical. When you are in the vulnerable, raw state of rediscovering your independence, it is terrifyingly easy to simply swap one form of codependency for another.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think of that.
It happens all the time. You might successfully stop relying on a romantic partner, but if you aren't careful, you will start relying entirely on your mother or your best friend.
To do what?
To make your decisions, soothe your anxieties, and define your reality.
Right. You lean so heavily on the support structure that you never actually rebuild your own internal muscles.
Exactly.
You're out of the relationship, but you still aren't solo.
Precisely. If the ultimate goal of the text is personal growth, the boundaries are the mechanism that ensures the support you receive remains constructive rather than destructive.
They filter the support.
Yes. Boundaries are what protect the fragile, emerging, independent self from being smothered by well-meaning but overbearing external influences.
Well-meaning is the key phrase there. They usually aren't trying to hurt you.
No, they love you. But their anxiety can become your anxiety if you aren't careful. And this seamlessly introduces the concept of forgiveness into the ecosystem, which the text highlights as a major component of healing.
Let's hover on boundaries for a second before we hit forgiveness.
Sure, let's explore that.
Because the way we define boundaries usually lacks teeth.
It is a very overused buzzword.
Right. People often think of a boundary as just asking someone nicely not to do something.
Which rarely works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But based on what we're discussing about identity and micro-certainties, a boundary isn't a suggestion, it's a quarantine.
A quarantine. That is an intense word, but accurate.
Well, think about it like this. When you are rebuilding your identity, your mind is like a clean room in a laboratory.
Okay, I'm with you.
It is a highly sensitive environment where a very delicate experiment is taking place. You are trying to synthesize a new version of yourself.
A very fragile process.
Yes. Your friends and family are the outside world. Even if they love you, they are covered in emotional contaminants.
That is such a vivid image.
Like if a friend comes into your space and wants to aggressively trash talk your ex for 3 hours because they think it's showing loyalty.
Which is very common.
Right. They are tracking mud all over your clean room. Setting a boundary is the airlock.
The airlock.
It is you standing at the door and saying, I value you, but you cannot bring that specific energy into this laboratory right now because it will destroy the experiment.
The clean room analogy perfectly captures the strict necessity of boundaries.
It takes the emotion out of it.
It does. It removes the guilt associated with saying no.
Yeah.
You aren't pushing people away out of malice. You are executing an energy audit.
An energy audit. I love that.
You are conserving the precious caloric and emotional energy required to rebuild a self. And this level of internal preservation is exactly how the text approaches the concept of forgiveness.
Okay, let's get into forgiveness.
We need to completely dismantle the societal definition of forgiveness here.
Because society usually gets it wrong.
Often, yes. Usually, we view forgiveness as an interpersonal transaction. Someone apologizes, and you grant them absolution.
Right, it is a two-person event.
But in the context of becoming solo, forgiveness is categorized alongside personal boundaries and inner strength.
So it is an internal tool.
It is an internal, unilateral mechanism. It is a tool utilized exclusively for the individual's healing.
It has nothing to do with the other person.
Nothing. It is about actively releasing the emotional debt you feel you are owed, solely so you can move forward unburdened.
Okay, this is where I guarantee people are going to get stuck.
I expect so. It is a tough concept.
How does forgiving a severe betrayal not completely obliterate your self-respect?
That is the big hurdle.
Like, let's say the breakup involved deep emotional harm, infidelity, financial ruin, something truly destructive.
Right. Real trauma.
If the central message of this summary is about building a life based on self-respect and inner strength, saying I forgive you feels entirely counterintuitive.
I understand why it feels that way.
It feels like saying you won and what you did to me was acceptable. How does the author reconcile the act of forgiveness with maintaining unshakable self-respect?
That tension is exactly why forgiveness is so deeply misunderstood.
So clear it up for us.
The conflict between forgiveness and self-respect only exists if we continue to equate forgiveness with excusing the behavior or with reconciliation.
Which we just established it isn't.
Exactly. Psychologically and within the framework of this memoir, forgiveness does not mean saying what you did is okay.
What does it mean then?
It means saying what you did is no longer going to dictate my emotional state.
Oh, wow.
Think about the biological reality we discussed earlier with anger and regret.
Right, the fight or flight state.
If you hold on to intense resentment, you are keeping your nervous system in a state of chronic stress. You are allowing the person who harmed you to continue operating the control panels of your neurochemistry long after they have left the room.
That is terrifying.
It is. Allowing an ex-partner to continuously hijack your present mood, your sleep, and your future choices is actually the ultimate loss of self-respect.
Because you are still letting them run your life.
Exactly. You are surrendering your inner strength to a ghost.
So forgiveness is taking the power back.
Forgiveness, therefore, is a biological and psychological hack. It is the conscious decision to sever that tether.
You just cut the line.
Yes. You do not forget the lesson, and you certainly do not invite the person back into the clean room.
The airlock stays shut.
The airlock is sealed.
Yeah.
But you drop the heavy, toxic baggage of the anger.
You leave it outside.
By forgiving, you reclaim complete jurisdiction over your own mind, ensuring that your new life is built entirely on your own terms, not in reaction to their past transgressions.
Man, if resentment is letting them operate your control panels, then forgiveness is just changing the locks to the control room.
Changing the locks, yes.
It has nothing to do with them at all. It is a prison break for you.
A total prison break.
You are cutting the anchor so your ship can finally move.
And that is the goal.
And that naturally begs the question. Once the anchor is cut, once the grief is processed, the uncertainty is managed, and the boundaries are locked in, where is the ship actually going?
What is the destination?
Exactly. The summary is incredibly definitive on this point.
It is very clear.
It encourages readers to recognize that happiness can exist outside romantic relationships.
Which shouldn't be a radical thought, but it is.
It really is. The core thesis, the entire point of the journey, is that becoming solo is not a failure, but an unparalleled opportunity.
An opportunity to create an authentic life.
Right. An authentic life based on self-respect, inner strength, and finding purpose.
This is where the text transitions from a guide on healing into a radical manifesto on living.
It really shifts gears.
It does. We have to confront the massive, invisible societal framework that dictates our behavior.
The expectations.
Yes. From the moment we are capable of understanding stories, the cultural narrative insists that romantic partnership is the default prerequisite for a successful life.
The fairy tale ending.
Exactly. Finding a partner is treated as the ultimate finish line.
And everything else is just secondary.
Right. Everything else, your career, your friendships, your personal development, your hobbies, is frequently treated as a sort of waiting room you occupy until your real life begins alongside someone else.
We really do treat single life like a waiting room.
By explicitly stating that profound happiness exists entirely outside these structures, and by framing solo as an opportunity rather than a tragic failure, the memoir advocates for a complete overthrow of that foundational philosophy.
Tearing down the whole system.
It takes the self-respect and emotional resilience cultivated in the earlier painful stages and shows how they culminate in the ability to live an authentic life.
A life where your purpose isn't tied to someone else.
Exactly. A life where your purpose is generated internally rather than derived from your utility to a romantic partner.
We can visualize this by thinking about the societal conveyor belt.
Okay, the conveyor belt. Let's explore that.
From a young age, you are placed on this massive moving walkway.
Like at an airport.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even have to think about the direction you are going. You date. That's step one.
Right.
The belt moves you smoothly to exclusivity. Then you merge finances, move in together, get engaged, get married.
Standard sequence.
The machinery of society just pulls you along, and everyone around you is on the exact same belt, assuming the end of the line is guaranteed happiness.
Yep, there's the promise.
So when a relationship ends, it feels like you have been violently thrown off the conveyor belt.
You are tossed to the side.
You are lying on the concrete floor, watching everyone else glide smoothly forward. And society looks down at you as if you have failed the fundamental task of existing.
The pitying stares again.
Exactly. But what this text is arguing is that being thrown off the belt is actually an awakening.
A rude awakening, but a necessary one.
Becoming solo means you stand up, brush yourself off, and realize you were never meant to be on a conveyor belt in the first place.
You realize you have legs.
Yes. You can walk out the door, you can off-road, you can navigate the wilderness and find your own highly specific purpose that has absolutely nothing to do with the pre-programmed route everyone else is blindly following.
The conveyor belt analogy is incredibly precise because it highlights the illusion of choice.
You feel like you are choosing, but the belt is doing the work.
Exactly. When you are on the belt, your path is predetermined by the structural expectations of the institution of romance.
Right.
When you are off the belt, out in the wilderness, as you put it, every single step requires a conscious, deliberate choice.
Which is terrifying, but also exhilarating.
And this brings us to the most demanding question the text poses. What are you actually choosing?
Right. If there's no belt, where do you walk?
The summary emphasizes the creation of an authentic life. When you are no longer compromising your time, your physical space, and your emotional energy to seamlessly accommodate another human being, you are forced to confront who you actually are in a vacuum.
That is the self-discovery piece again.
That is why the text inextricably links this final destination with self-discovery. An authentic life is the physical and emotional manifestation of that discovery.
Right. So if we take that logic a step further, that fundamentally changes the definition of how we live day to day.
It changes everything.
What does an authentic life actually look like in practice when compromise is totally removed?
It looks very different from a partnered life.
Because, let's face it, in relationship, compromise is the currency.
It is the only way it works.
You compromise on the temperature of the bedroom, you compromise on where to spend Thanksgiving, you compromise on financial risk.
You compromise constantly.
What does a life look like when you strip away the compromise and only authenticity remains?
An authentic life, according to the principles of this text, is a state of being where your external reality is a fictionless mirror of your internal values.
A frictionless mirror.
In a partnership, as you noted, compromise inevitably dilutes that reflection.
It makes the mirror a little blurry.
Right. You might value high-risk entrepreneurial ventures, but your partner values strict financial stability, so you settle for a safe corporate job.
That happens all the time.
That compromise isn't inherently evil. It is the necessary physics of sharing a life with someone.
But it is still a dilution of what you really wanted.
But when you become solo, that dilution evaporates. An authentic life built on inner strength means that your daily routines, your financial risks, the geographical location you choose to live in, and the specific purpose you pursue are entirely uncompromised reflections of what you genuinely value.
You just get to do it.
It looks like profound, unapologetic intentionality.
Give me a real-world example of that.
It might look like making a radical career pivot that a partner would have vetoed.
Okay, yeah.
It might look like spending a Friday night studying a new language, completely free from the underlying low-level guilt that you should be entertaining someone else.
That low-level guilt is so real.
But most importantly, an authentic life built on inner strength is characterized by complete cessation of performance.
The cessation of performance.
You are no longer performing the role of good partner, supportive spouse, or compromising teammate.
You can take the mask off.
You simply exist as you are, supported by the deep emotional resilience you build while navigating the initial loss.
The microcertainties pay off.
They do. You discover that your purpose is not defined by what you can provide for another person, but by what you are capable of cultivating within yourself.
A complete cessation of performance. That is such a striking way to define freedom.
It is absolute freedom.
You just get to be exactly who you are without the constant background noise of adjusting yourself to fit someone else's puzzle piece.
Exactly.
We have covered a massive amount of psychological and emotional ground today.
We really have. It is a dense text.
To synthesize the absolute core of what we've unpacked, this text is offering a lifeline.
But a heavy one.
Yes, it is a lifeline that requires you to do the heavy lifting. It demands that we completely stop viewing the end of a relationship as a signal of ultimate failure.
We have to drop that narrative entirely.
Instead, it invites you to see this brutal transition as a profoundly rare invitation.
An invitation to rebuild.
An invitation to stop paying the emotional mortgage on a past that no longer exists and clear out the toxic clutter of revenge and regret.
Stop funding the ghost town.
Yes. An invitation to step bravely into the cold, empty apartment of uncertainty and begin building those microcertainties.
Step by step.
An invitation to lean on your community while ruthlessly guarding your internal clean room with the strong boundaries of a gatekeeper.
Keeping the airlock sealed.
And ultimately, it provides the blueprint for building a life of unshakable self-respect, where your happiness and your purpose are generated entirely by you, for you.
The journey outlined in this summary is undeniably arduous.
It is not a quick fix.
It requires facing the parts of yourself you usually use a relationship to hide from.
That is a tough pill to swallow.
But the reward at the end of that journey is immeasurable.
It really seems to be.
The true victory in becoming solo, as the text ultimately reveals, is not merely surviving the devastation of a breakup.
Because survival is just the floor.
Surviving is just the baseline biological imperative. The true victory is the radical, quiet realization that your capacity for profound happiness, your deep well of resilience, and your ultimate purpose in life were always internal.
I were there the whole time.
They were never actually reliant on the presence of another person. The relationship you lost may have been a beautiful, important chapter in your life, but you are the solitary author of the entire book.
You are the solitary author of the entire book.
Exactly.
Man, that is powerful. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question that builds on the incredible foundation we've just laid out.
Something to think about.
A thought to sit with after you hit pause. If becoming solo is truly the ultimate opportunity to discover who you are without compromise, and to create an authentic life based entirely on your own inner strength.
The big what if.
How much is our deep primal fear of being solo actually preventing us from living authentically, even while we are currently sitting safely inside our relationships?
That is the real question.
Are we constantly shrinking ourselves, performing, and sacrificing our self-respect day in and day out simply because we are terrified of facing the uncertainty of being alone?
It is something we all need to ask ourselves.
Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.